This is Larry Lawton, and he's an ex-jewel thief. Larry's a former career criminal, once considered the biggest jewel thief in the United States.
The boat goes on fire. We're out in the middle just of Lake George and the boat going on fire. Chapter 5 is Diamonds Are a Guy's Best Friends. I'm actually doing this in Key West, Florida during R&R so I can keep the chapters rolling every Thursday and Sunday. I hope you guys are liking this new format. Some people are saying they really like it a lot. So diamonds are a guy's best friend. You know, my next robbery was a place in Fort Lauderdale, which was close to where I lived at the time. I lived in North Lauderdale. And so we do the robbery pretty much set up the same way. We go in, I end up taking two people down, there's two store people, and I was dressed always in a nice suit, or not a suit, a sports jacket at least, and they didn't know, so they always had a Rolex, always had my stuff. So when I do that, after I get the people down, I tie them up behind the thing. Now, the doors always have a buzzer. So since they have a buzzer, I only let the people in, which makes robbing the jewelers a lot better. So what happens is, I bring my partner in, we're getting in there, and all of a sudden, two people come to the door. Okay, you let them in, you show them a gun, you say, hey, listen, you're in a robbery, come on, get down. We ended up having 10 people in the store. Literally 10. I ran out of flex cuffs. I used to keep flex cuffs in my back pockets, in my suit jacket pocket. So we had flex cuffs. We ran out of flex cuffs. So while we're there was this one guy who was really an asshole, and he kept like saying stuff, and I'm thinking, this guy must be a cop. What's wrong? What's going on? So I go over to him. He's on the floor. He's tied up. I check him. I pull out his wallet. He's not a cop. I look at him. He's just nobody. And I never took jewelry off a person's finger in the robbery or something like that. Well, this guy had a gold bracelet on, and I take off his gold bracelet, and I look at it, and it's fake. So when it's a fake gold thing, I said, you piece of shit, you fugazi, you bullshitter, you know. And the girls, the two girls that work behind the counter start cracking up. And they're on the floor and they're laughing. And this guy shuts up. And I just looked at him. I said, yeah, I threw it at him. It was such a joke. But he shut up. We ended up getting at it. And I'll tell you what, it was a good score, but it was in Fort Lauderdale, right in the car, all the way to Brooklyn. And once we get to Brooklyn, we actually went to Jersey that time. And after that score is nice. We do, always party. We'll get into the party in here in a little bit. But anyway, I set up H. Stern Jewelers. So let me tell you, H. Stern Jewelers is one of the biggest jewelers in the United States. It's not a chain. They're mega. They're in high-end hotels. They're in high-end malls. Well, there was an H. Stern and one in Bahia Mar. One was in the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. It was in the lobby, H. Stern. There was also one in Bow Harbor Malls. Those are the two places, H. Stern Jewelers. So I look at the one in Bow Harbor Mall, and I said, that can't be done. It was in the back, down below. To get away would have been really too hard. But then there was one in the lobby of the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. And great place to case the place. You could case it there was a piano bar across the lobby. You could sit at that, like when they have people in there and people having drinks. People are always going back and forth to the pool, so it was easy to case the place, to learn when and where the people were, coming in, going, when security's going. I went in it to a few times, like as if I'm a tourist in the area, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh my God, there is money in here. And I'm literally looking through these cases, checking out the prices, knowing what high-end watches, everything's in. There had to be about 12 million bucks. I said, oh man, this is a big score. There's gonna be about 4 million in my pocket. 4 million to me. So it was so big of a score, I called the guys I dealt with and said, hey, listen, this score is gonna be huge, so how can we work this out? Because I knew how big it was. They go, Larry, a store like that, you got to get out of town. You got to let heat cool, whatever you're going to do, because it's going to be really a lot of pressure on this one. And sure enough, I said, of course. He goes, I'll give you $1 million right when you see me, and we'll work out $1 million every other month or something of that nature. I said, okay, that's good. I trusted them. Here we are. I said, oh, this is the biggest score, but how can you do it? And when I say I cased it, I stayed in that lobby, had drinks at night, got in the morning like I was eating coffee, went to the pool, so I'd walk by in a bathing suit and a towel, just so I looked like I was a person that was in the hotel. I never stayed in a hotel. No one knew my name in that place or anything of that nature. And I watched, and I saw who came in, what time they came in. The guard came in. The owner came in first. The owner came in, or the manager is really who it is. The manager came in at around 9 o'clock in the morning, 8:30. They opened at, I think, 10 o'clock. And the owner would get in there about 9 o'clock. So he'd leave. So I said, okay, but the security guard didn't come until 9:30. So I knew I had a window from 9 to 9:30 where there's no security guard. But how do you get to that guy? He's not going to open the door. He's not going to let you get in. He watched when he went into stores. He was looking around him. Then he went in. I'll never forget that. So how do I get into that store? Here was my plan. I ended up following this guy home, and he lived in Hollywood, Florida, which is a pretty good ways from Miami Beach. So I followed him home, and the plan, I ended up going to buy sticks that looked like dynamite. You know, like they were flares, but they looked like dynamite. Put wire on them, put them all three together, and it was pretty wild because it looked exactly like dynamite. I'm not going to hurt anyone, but I'm going to take the dynamite. I'm going to strap it to the owner. I had a look like a clicker and buzzer. Actually clicked, and I said, listen, if I hit this buzzer, you're going to blow up. And I'll tell you what, if my partner does not, this is what my plan was, my partner does not hear from me every so often, I'm going to have your family killed. Now, this is what my thought pattern was. None of this happened. I'm going to tell you why. So here I am figuring, okay, hold them hostage. I will tell my partner, we're really going to leave right away when it happens, tie him up, make sure they can't tie it up beforehand until he hears from me. Then he just leaves the place and he's gone. And then I even told, the thought pattern was so deep in my head that even I said, listen, if you crash the car, if you flag down a cop, I'm just going to jump out and hit this button. You're going to die, whether I get caught or not, your family's getting killed. This is what my thought pattern was. And it got so far to get to this jewelry store with so much money, was thinking about it, that we actually hid in the bushes in front of his house. But a neighbor's dog was barking and kind of like spooked us. And I called it off. Called it a gut feeling, and it was the best move I ever made. Because once you kidnap somebody, there's no what they call statute of limitations. You're done. You're going to get caught, and that's the end of it. You're going to go to jail forever. It was H. Stern Jewelers. It never happened. It would have been the biggest score, one of the biggest scores in America, for sure. And now they had mega scores all over the country, all over the world. But that would have been the biggest jewelry robbery ever, for sure. And it didn't go off, and I'm glad it didn't go off. It probably another freak thing that saved my life by not going off. So H. Stern Jewelers was a wild robbery that never happened, thank God. And it was the gut feeling, with all that money. So it was pretty crazy and enjoyed it. So here I am, even though that store didn't go off, I'm living the good life. You want to talk about girls and women. Here I am married. I have what they call a gumata, which is a girlfriend. I have a neighbor that I'm playing around with, and I have a secretary in a security guard company I'm playing around with. So every day I'm literally playing around with 4 women, doing coke, lines of coke, 8 feet long on the bars at different bars and places and hookers and strippers, and I was just I was off the charts. And I lived Vida Loco, the crazy life, and it was just crazy, crazy, crazy. I used to throw, people always knew me as a good guy too, because I always threw a party. I always invited people over to my house for the fights, for Memorial Day, for July 4th was the biggest parties. I used to throw mega parties with 1,000 cases of 10 kegs of beer, 1,000 hot dogs, 1,000 hamburgers, ride companies, Barney for the kids, paint facing and all that kind of car show. And I did it all for the neighborhood for nothing. I was kind of like a Robin Hood. A lot of people said he was a good guy, man. He was all right. they didn't know I was a criminal of that magnitude. They all thought I was doing something, whether it was drug dealer or mobster or whatever it was, that I was making money, because I had my hands in a lot of things. But, you know, bookmaking and that kind of stuff. But it was just, I lived a crazy life. But the core of the life was robbing the jewelry stores, of course. I even used to take, I remember my parents lived up in, at the time, Palm Bay, Florida, and I was in Fort Lauderdale. So I actually, my parents were bowlers, and they knew a guy named, I'll never forget his name, Larry Brewer. Larry Brewer was a disc jockey on WMMB. That's a good memory. But WMMB was the radio station, and he was a disc jockey, and he knew my parents from the bowling and where they sponsored and stuff. So I called up and I said, hey, listen, you know, I want to do something good for kids. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, I want to go to Toys R Us and buy a bunch of toys for like disadvantaged kids. So there was a home up here. It had about 14, 15, 16 like orphans and kids, fostered kids in this house, and they were taking care of them. And I ended up going to Toys R Us and filling the thing with toys and what they needed the house, a volleyball net at the time. I think back even then they just came out with like a Nintendo or something of that nature, or Atari or one of those. And this is in probably 90s, early 90s. And I ended up buying over $2,000 worth of toys and stuff and bringing it to the home, gift wrapped and everything else. And all these kids got all these toys, and it was just amazing. While I was there, I saw the kids didn't even have sneakers, like real sneakers to wear. Some of them had, you know, totally worn out with a hole in the bottom and stuff, and they didn't have anything. And I ended up going out and buying shoes, sneakers for every kid in the whole place. And it was just rewarding. And I don't know if that's something in me that happens, or, you know, the good part of me fighting the bad part. My sister used to think I was she was Christian. She goes, Larry, you were the devil and you were, you know, good, and it was fighting. It's just fighting each other. It's just crazy when I think about it. But it is crazy, and that was some crazy stuff. I still had the gambling bug, and the gambling bug is crazy. I mean, I went to the Bahamas one time, and get off the plane in the Bahamas. I'm with my wife at the time, my second wife, young wife, and a friend of hers, and we go into the Bahamas. And I brought like 10 grand with me in cash. And before we checked into the hotel, I was comped, they call it, because I was a big gambler. Before I got to the room, I ended up losing the 10 grand. Walking by some tables, I played a few hands at 1,000 and 2,000. I ended up losing that money within probably 15 minutes. And we get to the room, and I got violated. They go, what do you do? I threw a glass against the wall. I was just, after it gets out of my system, I don't hold grudges. I'm not like that. And what do? I call up Fat Tony. I said, Tony, send Junior down. I said, go into the safe. He had the combination to my safe in the house. I said, go get 10 grand, send him down here right away on the next plane. And sure enough, the next day he comes down. I got another 10 grand to gamble with, and I just had that bug, and it was just crazy, losing crazy money doing that. And it's the way it was. I mean, I had carte blanche. You want to talk about Taj Mahal? I used to go to the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, and I used to stay on the Maharaji floor, which was the 49th floor. And that's where I met Roger King. Roger King owned King World, which owned Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Oprah Winfrey Show. They owned and developed all those shows. He obviously, even to this day, it's just created by King World. Him and his brother, Roger and Michael King, own King World. I ended up meeting Roger King at a casino. I'll never forget, we were in the Taj Mahal, and we're in the high roller pit. And here's Roger King. He's crazy, you know. Just to give everybody a kind of thing that put things in relativity. He's a billionaire. I was just a lowly gangster, but I'm betting $1,000 a hand, every hand. Roger King is betting $10,000 and $20,000 a hand. It was crazy. Funny story, we're sitting in the high roller pit in the Taj Mahal, and we're at the table, and we're doing coke. We're partying out the ass. It was just crazy. And Roger King gives his chips. He's got, I don't know, $250,000, I think it was like that, in chips. He gives them to a guy he's with and says, go cash these in at the booth. You know, it's right in the high roller. They have a little cage there to go cash in or put your chips in. And he wanted to go, and they go, he comes back, he says, Mr. King, they want your ID card. He's so funny. He gets up on the taste. Now, you're in the high chairs area, and he starts going up. I'm pulling him, trying to get that. Roger, get down, get down. He says, this place, I'm going to buy this place and fire Trump. That's exactly what he said. And I'm laughing. I am just laughing. We was just so f***ed up. So he says to me, come on, you going to the fights? I said, yeah, we were going to I'll never forget the fight. It was Michael Moore versus Burt Cooper. And I'm sitting third row. I had ringside seats, and actually at that party, it was Fat Tony's birthday. So I took him up and a bunch of other people up to Atlantic City from Florida and New York, and we're all partying down there, coke, women, unbelievable. And we got third row seats to the boxing match of Burt Cooper, Michael Moore. Who do I see at the front of the ring is Roger King. Roger King calls me down. He goes, come here, Larry. He liked me. For whatever reason, we hit it off. He calls me down. He goes, Donald Trump was right there. He says, Donald, this is Larry. Larry, Donald. Now get out of here. Just like that, he pushed off Trump. He wasn't a Trump fan. So he pushed off Trump, and we start talking. We're at the ringside now, and I'm like right there. And so before the fight starts, we talk, and he goes, hey, let's bet on the fight. I said, okay. He goes, well, Michael Moore's mine. I didn't know that. Obviously, now I did. Michael Moore, he was the sponsor. They were very big into boxing. They pretty much wanted to control all of boxing. Some funny stories about that later. So what does he do? He bets. He goes, okay, I'll give you 5-1. So I threw him $1,000 chip. I had $1,000 chip. I threw him $1,000 chip. I had chips in my pocket all over. Whatever I was doing at that point. And he goes, sure. So I said, man, I can make $5,000 if he wins. The first round, I'll never forget, Burt Cooper knocks Michael Moore on his butt. I go, oh my God, I just won $5,000. Fifth round, Michael Moore came back and knocked out Burt Cooper. But it was just a great experience, and it showed me the relativity of things too. And what I mean by the relativity of things is I could be worth X amount of dollars, even today or anybody. Everybody is in their own lane. You could be worth a lot of money and things mean more to you or not. I was betting big for anybody, and he's betting 10 and 20,000 a hand. So everything you think, wow, is there somebody bigger than that? I had the 49th floor. It's called the Maharaji floor in the Taj Mahal. On the next floor was only 3 suites with a butler, a cook, and a maid standing at the door all day long, and that was where Roger King stayed. And I was comped, and I had, the button that hits the TV up and all the stuff. So, but everything was relative, and it was just crazy to think like that. I remember being, with Roger King. He was a great guy. When he liked you, he liked you. I mean, he's another guy I watched. We're at the high roller pit. Some guy comes to sit down, and of course the pit bosses come over. Hold on, and Roger King goes, "Hey, what were you gonna bet?" The guy gets $500. Roger King gives him $500. Says, "I'm sorry, this is a private table." Just drew him $500. So things were relative. I'm like, wow, and it was just him and I at this table, and that's what we liked and partied and crazy. It was just a crazy time back then. Oh, I'll tell you, at this time I have money, so I says, I'll never forget, I'm watching the movie Lonesome Dove. The movie Lonesome Dove's on TV, and if you didn't know about the Lonesome Dove, it's with Robert Duvall, and it's a Western and all this, and I loved horses. When I was a kid, I was a small guy. I know I'm a big guy now. I'm 240 pounds and pretty big guy. Back when I was a kid, when I was 13, 14 years old, I was 100 pounds. And my dad sent me to Delray Beach to be a jockey. So, of course, obviously, as you could see, I couldn't be a jockey. I'd break a horse's back now. But I always loved horses. So I'm watching this movie, Lonesome Dove, and I call up Fat Tony. I say, "Tony, get the car. We're going to buy a horse." He goes, "What track's it racing at?" I go, "No, it's a horse. It's a riding horse." He goes, "What track?" I said, "No." He goes, "What is it, a trotter?" I said, "Get in the fucking car. We're going to buy a horse. We're going to buy a horse to ride." So he gets the car. I think I had the old Cadillac. So we get in the car and we head down to a place in Fort Lauderdale, out in Davie, called the Triple Cross Ranch. It looked like, at first I thought it was a KKK ranch. No, it's not. They were really beautiful people. Christian ranch, and that guy's name I'll never forget, Mike Fletcher. To this day, I hear from him. He's a minister, actually. It was a Christian ranch. Well, I pull up, and just picture this scene. Here's these two New Yorkers pulling up to a ranch, getting out in slacks and Bally's of Switzerland shoes and a nice shirt. And I get out and I say to the guy, I said, look, and I want to, because he had horse signs, horses for sale. I said, I want to buy a horse. He looked at me like, what, am I crazy? I said, listen, here's the deal. If I buy a horse, you got to show me how to ride it. I knew how to ride a horse from the racing. I'm talking about now rodeo horses, like rodeo and team penning and team roping and heading and heeling, and I did all that. So he goes, sure, I'll do that. So here we are. I end up buying 2 horses, a trailer, the saddles, had the horses boarded for $300 each a month, which is a lot back then, $600 a month just to board the horses, where they fed it hay and oats, and they'd muck the stalls. And I ended up loving the horses. I had a horse named Chalk and a horse named Hammer. Chalk was a very good horse. I paid a lot of money for him, where he could squeeze his legs and he would do anything. It was just a great horse. I love that horse. And then I had a horse called Hammer, which is a little bit feistier, and he was a barrel racing horse. The other horse was like a team roping horse and team penning, where you go out and get cows and bring them into a pen and a thing. Pretty interesting stuff. And I had a lot of fun on a horse. It was my getaway. I used to go out there all messed up on weed and coke or whatever, but I had my fun out there doing that. It was pretty crazy times. So also, these are the times of the crazy living that I lived. I ended up having a friend of mine named Nicky over in Brooklyn. He used to go down to Jersey and get the cars, and he'd go to the auction houses. So I wanted to buy a boat. So he goes, okay, come with me. We'll get you a boat at the auction house. Okay, go down there. I ended up buying a van and a boat. I ended up buying a conversion van with the captain's chairs and beautiful van. I had all the works. And I also bought a boat. I bought a 21-foot center console with inboard, outboard. It wasn't center console, right side, but it had indoor, outdoor. Inboard, outboard motor, great boat. I mean, beautiful boat. And I said, okay, I want to go to Lake George. So my brother and I, we want to go to Lake George. And what do? We take the boat and we hook it to the van. We're all ready to go. We got it strapped down. We're going to Lake George. Anybody knows anything about Lake George? It's got all these islands on it. You could rent the island. We used to do that when we were kids. So we wanted to go to Lake George. So it's really pretty cool. So we go up to Lake George. And we're heading up there. It's a good trip. It's 4 or 5 hours from New York City. So we're heading to Lake George, and we got the boat in tow, and all of a sudden we hear, and it was the axle on one of the tires on the trailer blew, and it's got sparks flying, and we pull over to the right. We don't lose the boat. The boat was strapped down good. I had to have a flatbed come out, take that, put that on a flatbed, take it to like a gas station mechanic shop, somewhere to where we were, and they fixed it. It cost me $1,000 to put a new axle, everything on. I'll never forget that. We hooked back up on the road. It's going to be a great trip. So here we are on the way. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't latch and lock the thing on the ball. It has the chains coming to it, but it doesn't have the latch, the lock that I should have put on it. We must have hit a bump. It comes off. The ball goes back. We feel the car go back, and then it goes back into the van. I think I'm the only man who had a boat hit his van. Literally, smashed the back of the van. The whole door goes in. Boom! We stop, pull over. What's going on? It was dragging because now it's down. The chains are holding it. We get it. Didn't do. We put it back on the thing. Great. I look at the van. I said, look at this trip. We already spent $1,000. Now this door's broke. We end up hooking it up. We don't know what we're doing now. I even tied it. I made sure it will never come up. So we get to Lake George. Okay, we're going to go to Lake George. We're going to have a lot of fun in Lake George. We're going to water ski it. We put the boat in the water. You'd think I would know better from being a Coast Guard and all that. We back the boat up. We don't open the impeller. The impellers, you have to have the intake opened up to get water in to cool the engine. Inside there's like a rubber thing. We burn that up. That gets into the engine. Costs $4,000 to fix it. The boat goes on fire. We're out in the middle just of Lake George and the boat going on fire. We end up putting it out and we get towed in. Some people towed us in. We go back to the marina. Takes the guy 2 days to fix the engine. Cost us $4,000 just to fix the engine on this boat. And I'm like, oh my God, this trip cost me already $5,000 in cash and the door in the van. We ended up having a pretty good trip. I ended up getting a ticket, I'll never forget, we were water skiing without a spotter on the boat, and we didn't. And I ended up getting a ticket for that. But it was kind of funny because we ended up coming back. I said, I'm done. No more boat, no more van. Let's get rid of this crap. Boom, sold everything. I was done with it. But we had a lot of fun. And that's the kind of stuff. I did what I wanted. It was kind of crazy time in my life. So, and every time, how I was running things back then is anytime my safe went under $40,000, anytime my safe went under $50,000 in my safe, I knew it was time to start getting ready for a robbery, starting to plan my next score, starting to do different things, getting ready and all that kind of stuff. So here what I do is I get ready by, okay, planning, getting the guys ready, what we're going to be going, kind of the area we're going. So what do? We head to Maryland. Never forget, we go to Maryland. Now, Maryland is right outside of Washington. This is Four Corners, Maryland, where I end up figuring out the store to rob. So while I'm casing, I'm a history buff. To this day, I'm a history buff. I'll never forget, we go to the White House. Not in the White House, but we go to the White House. I had my old Coast Guard jacket on. The peacoat, they call them. They used to give you in the Coast Guard. So anyway, we go into the White House, like we're outside the White House, and I have binoculars. I have binoculars from my, casing the store. And I'm just looking at the White House, and it's pretty cool. And I look on the roof, and I see Secret Service agents looking right at me with their binoculars. And it was just like kind of eerie, thinking, wow, did they really think it? They know I'm going to be robbing a jewelry store soon? But no, it was one of the best scores I ever did. I think I got, I think it was $1.2 million out of that store. And I remember giving Dominic an envelope for about $50,000. The guys I was with made $70,000 each, so everybody made a lot of money on that thing. It was a hell of a score, and that was in Four Corners in Maryland. And it was the way we did that robbery. It was it was under construct. There was a lot of construction going on, and again, after casing places and seeing nobody walking by could look in, they had a display case that you couldn't look in, and then there was like boards, like like boardwalks where the construction guys were going up and down and around. So it was easy to do, meaning, nobody's going to just walk in. They had to be there and specifically go to that store. And if they did that, that's good for me because then they're coming in, I put them down. Nobody came in. It was a really quick getaway, and it was not a long trip back to Brooklyn, actually. It was about 5 hours, 5.5 hours, something like that, back to Brooklyn. And then once we got back to Brooklyn, did my regular thing, called my people, stuff like that. Speaking about that last robbery, and when I say diamonds are a guy's best friends, because they made me a lot of money. And that's why they named the chapter, diamonds are a guy's best friend. And I really probably meant it by me. And I lived that crazy life. And, we're going to talk more about that in the next chapter. But we hope you like this chapter. I hope you like the way I'm doing it. Any suggestions are always welcome. You could always listen to the full read on the link below in Spotify or on iTunes. I'm literally reading the book verbatim. So you can do either one. I'm summarizing these chapters, remembering stories and how it actually went, so it's really off the cuff. I take a few notes just to kind of, it's wild because I sit here and I look and I think about crazy life I lived with Roger King and the people and knowing all these people I ended up getting to know. And it's pretty crazy, but I'm here to tell it. Stay tuned, Chapter 6 coming up next. Thank you.